Select a journey.
Hello and welcome back to part 3 of the Gauntlet Legends Let's Play video. This, of course, as I had mentioned in my other video,
you are now entering the Acid Swamp.
This is actually being played on the original hardware, so no emulation here. This was all played on my original Vegas 777 Atari board. So this is exactly what you would see in the arcade, and of course this was captured on the Elgato Game Capture HD, so everything will look nice and sharp. I didn't record off screen like in my old videos. So this is the third realm of the game. It has these like kind of creepy lizard looking guys and the spiders. And then there's some random plants that show up all along the levels. And I know I'd made mention of it in my other videos, but this game has some really good music. I definitely have to say that. It just sets that like kind of atmosphere that you're in this like jungle / swamp area. And it just gives you that feeling that it's like this foreboding area that's really nasty and you should really be careful. And if you had seen me right there, I was looking at that gate. There's a lot of times in this game where there'll be a gate where you don't need to go through it, but if you do, you're just more or less wasting a key that you could use later. I know in one of my other videos I'd made mention that I never buy keys, and the reason that is I always try to save as many keys as I possibly can, because why buy keys if I can just save keys by not going through redundant doorways, because you just don't have to go through all the doorways in the game. And that's one thing I'll always do, is if there's a lot of enemies and there's a generator and there's no way I can defeat all the enemies in the generator, I'll use my ultimate attack, if you will, which is done by when your meter fills all the way up to red. You just press your turbo and your attack button, and that will unleash that attack. And it's one of those other things I've probably mentioned in my other videos, but might as well mention it again. But if it fills to the green level is filled, you'll get what's called a turbo attack, which will be just kind of like a faster / stronger attack. And then when you get to the yellow level, you'll get the like first super attack, which for the green archer here is double bow, which you'll have 2 bows, 1 in each hand, and just shoot a barrage of arrows all across the screen. And then of course if it fills all the way to the red, you'll get your ultimate attack, which of course with the green archer here is BFG. So it's really good to save up that power until you really need it with an enemy that you really need to defeat. And the cool part about these levels is a lot of times they're very non-linear, so you kind of have to find all the little paths that you can find here. And now since this is part of my my full playthrough, the limited invisibility that I got here, he didn't say because I had previously picked it up. He'll typically only say the name of the power-up if it's your first time picking it up, or if you haven't picked it up in, say, a while. So, like, if I don't get the Fire Amulet for a while, he might say Fire Amulet again.
I've not seen such bravery.
And, like, typically stuff like with the fruit there, he won't say fruit gives you a certain amount of health again, because he already had said it last time. And as I'd mentioned in my previous 2 videos, this is a full playthrough where I'm getting all the rune stones, so if you see me just kind of finding the exit and not using it, it's because I want to explore the whole level and make sure there's no extra rune stones in the level, because I wanted to get the true ending, which you do not get unless you get all the rune stones.
Has gained a level.
And what you'd seen a few minutes ago there is the double bow, which was the second level super shot, if you will. But yeah, what I was saying is I wanted to get all the rune stones, so I had to fully explore all the levels, because a lot of times with these first levels in the realm, you'll often have your first runestone in the first level, but of course there have been a few times where the first runestone is like in the second, or even sometimes the third level. I've seen some of the realms in some of these games where it'll be the second, the third, fourth, and fifth levels all have the runestones. But it really depends on the realm, of course. And you'll see that was another case where there's just a lot of enemies behind me, and I just wanted to take care of them really quick. And on occasion that'll happen. You'll see like a full level enemy just kind of appeared there, and there was no generator. So that was probably just a glitch in the game that caused that. And that's one thing you definitely watch out for, is the hazards, which are like the swinging blades and the things that come together. And of course the acid thing that shoots up like that. If you get hit by that,
needs food.
You don't get hurt too badly, but it's just enough. And that's the good thing about actually having the arcade board, is you just hit your coin button. Or of course, if this were in a cabinet, I can hit like one of the tester service buttons. I think will actually get you coins as well, which is most likely what I have it wired to. And this was one of those cases where the runestone was not in the first level, so I did not get a runestone there.
Buy power-ups.
And I always thought it was cool how it showed like the comparative level of kills and the comparative level
You are now entering the twisted roots of evil.
Gold that you get. And now here's the second level of the forest realm here, which is the Twisted Roots. Basically, when it comes to this forest realm, it's like a swamp/tree type thing. So those are what your major themes for your levels are, either like swamp or tree. It's not really as much forest as the title would make you think. And as you'd seen in the last level, your regular enemies are kind of like these orange, like kind of grunt guys. And then your spiders are your small enemies. I think it's the third level where you get your special enemy. Like if you remember right, in the castle realm it was the knights, and in the mountain realm it was kind of those creatures that shot fire at you when you got to like the volcano. They're like kind of lava monsters, if you will. But of course, if you've never seen this, if it's a forest realm, it's not too hard to guess what the special enemy here, of course, would be. So we'll see that on the next level here, but the basic gist of the roots here is it is the first level where you're kind of walking on branches here. And there's always a lot of things going on. And you'll see the lobber looks the same as your basic enemies, just like in the other realms. And you can easily see that there's going to be one of those golems that's going to pop up here. Which I was surprised, like, it waited so long. Like, I was really right on top of it before it popped up. If I recall correctly, in Dark Legacy, it's actually a lot easier to destroy these guys. A lot of times, you'll actually defeat the golem in just, like, one super attack, so it won't be as much of a big deal as it is in Legends here. Which seems kind of strange that it'd kind of be dumbed down, but I guess they figured they'd start out really easy, and then they would scale the difficulty based on your level. Because at this point I'm at like level 36, so everything might be a little bit harder. And that's one thing that I always liked, is that if you get too close to the enemies, you'll do melee attacks, which, unfortunately with the melee attacks, if you're using a character like the archer here, melee attacks really rely a lot on your strength. And as I mentioned numerous times in part 1 and part 2 of this video series here, the melee attacks actually rely a lot on your strength, which is why I always tend to buy the strength, because it's something that the archer is very much lacking. And that was probably one of those occasions, if I had taken the long way around, I could have saved the key, but at this point I just wanted to get to the next piece of the level. And if you recall correctly, in the Mountain Realm, the things that shot up like that were actually fire instead of acid. Which doesn't make any difference, it's just a different color and it still hurts you all the same. It's not like it's acid and it poisons you or anything. And I know I say it in every video, but I definitely have to say, considering this was 1998, I still look at this today and think to myself, the graphics really do hold up well. It's not like one of those... If you ever see any of those, like, first 3D games, if you will, they kind of have that very blocky feeling, or that very, they weren't really ready to kind of do this yet thing. So, this game just honestly looks good. It just has that, good graphic nature to it. And it doesn't have that, why did they even try this, because of the graphics technology wasn't ready yet. But it just ends up looking very good because it runs off of, the Voodoo 2 type card. So it has a lot of graphics to back everything up, and you can have like all the enemies on screen at once. And the one thing to keep in mind is, with a lot of people would think that like maybe the Voodoo 2 wasn't the strongest or most powerful card, but what you have to realize with an arcade game like this, unlike running a card like that on a PC, you don't have to worry about running like an operating system in the background, because the only thing that we're actually running here is just the game. We're not running anything else. So there's no like Windows layer or MS-DOS layer running underneath this. And of course, we're up to 7 runestones because there were 3 from the Mountain Realm and then 3 from the Castle Realm. So that makes a total of 7 at this point. Because that's the cool thing, is since there are 4 realms, 12 runestones, there are 3 in each realm. The thing that I don't like about Gauntlet Dark Legacy is, since there's more realms in that game, instead of increasing the number of runestones, they just left it at 12, and I think there's like 6 realms and 2 runestones per realm, which it wouldn't have hurt them to make more runestones, in my opinion. And that's the unfortunate part. If there's a magic potion when you're trying to hit enemies, you'll shoot the magic, which of course will still make the magic take effect, but as I'm sure he probably said it in the first video of the series, he'll say something like, shooting magic has a lesser effect. But it's still, of course, it's a good thing if you have a lot of enemies in one area and you want to get rid of them real quick. You'll shoot the magic potion that's sitting there and it'll have an area effect. And now, since at this point I know I got the runestone in this area, I don't have to stick around and wait, I can just leave now. And that's the good thing about the runestone levels. If you get the runestone early in the level, you don't have to keep walking around the level trying to find one. And as I know I had mentioned in the last video, the runestone locations and what levels they are is different from the console versions. And as you may have guessed, here's your special enemy for this realm, which is actually the tree stump guys. I couldn't call them tree guys because they don't have branches or leaves or anything. They're just kind of like dead tree stumps. So that is your special enemy for this realm. And just like every other realm, if you had just seen there, the lobber looks the same as the regular grunt enemy, so it won't look like a tree throwing bombs, which would have been really cool, but I guess they just didn't want to do that. And I can remember the first time that I actually had played this, when I heard the actual sound that the trees made when you killed them, that like kind of splintering wood sound, I thought it was just a great sound to actually have in the game. It just really sounds like you're destroying the enemy, kind of like the sound of the knights being destroyed in the castle realm was kind of a metal being destroyed type sound. And now, since this is the branches as opposed to the roots, where you kind of were still on the ground, but you were more or less going through some of the roots. Now you're going up in the branches. So now you have all these other different little paths here that you have to go through. And just like you would have guessed, all the tree guys come out of hollowed out tree stump, and that's their generator. And even if you see like this, the subtle shadow effects and the subtle lighting effects, it just, unfortunately, something you didn't see in most of the console versions. And that's one thing I don't like about the tree guys, is they tend to swarm you before you know it. And now, one thing I think is kind of silly about those areas where, like, the piece of the ground falls out of the way, I thought it would have been cool if, it was a hazard and you could actually, like, fall off the cliff. And now that's one of the places where I, like, really got hit by the hazard. So, you gotta really be careful with that. But one thing to do is, if you're waiting for a hazard to clear like I'm doing here, just keep shooting, and that'll get rid of any enemy who's over there. And now you'll see this area here, it would only be for 2 players.
Follow arrows.
If you step on the activator there, it'll make the path appear, but it can only work if there's 2 players. So one player would step on the thing and the other player would go along on the path. But it's not like it was much of a departure from the general path you were going on anyway, so...
Join in anytime.
And now, that's one thing that the announcer guy will say. If there's extra credits in the middle there, because even though in most Gauntlet Legends machines, you'll actually have 4 coin chutes, they actually all go into a pool in the middle, so it's not like player 1 coins, player 2, player 3, and player 4 coins. It's everybody shares the same pool of coins. So, honestly, if you really wanted to be a real jerk, you could steal someone else's coins as they insert them, but I doubt anybody would be too happy with you if you did that. And that's one thing he's a bit too quick in this game, in my opinion, is he seems like he says follow arrows before I'm even lost.
Green Archer has gained a level.
There should be a way to actually limit the amount he says follow arrows, like maybe that would be something in like the test mode where you can say follow arrows after like 10 minutes or something, or follow arrows after 5 minutes of being quote-unquote lost. That's one thing I think is cool about any of the ground enemies, is your character will actually just stomp them.
8 runestones have been found.
And now that makes 1 more for this realm until I have all the runestones. And of course, the reason why you saw me backtracking was because the arrows were pointing up there, which means that's the place to go.
Follow arrows.
So I wanted to go back and get the runestone because, of course, as I said, I'm trying to get all the runestones in this playthrough, so I could show you the true ending of Gauntlet Legends in the arcade. Now, I'm not sure if that's the same or any different from the console versions, as I can honestly say, at the time of recording this, I have actually never, like, 100% fully completed the console versions. Because it's one of those things, like, what'll often happen with me is, like, I'll have an arcade or location to play this at. I'll play it a lot, but I won't, like, quite complete it. Except for, as I said, that one time I was in, I think it was like 2000 or 2001, I was on a cruise ship, and they actually have to have this game in the arcade. And we did a full playthrough, me and a few of the other kids who were actually on the cruise. But
Shoot green barrels.
not knowing about the rune stones and what effect they had on the game, we didn't get all the rune stones. So more or less, after defeating the first form of Scorn, what it did is it just threw you back into the game. You could go back to the realms that you didn't get all the rune stones for. And that's why when you see on the level selected, it says completed, then you have not only beat the boss, but you have also gathered all rune stones. If it says traveled, that means that you've defeated the boss, but you have not got the rune stones. So you need to basically go back and backtrack. As you had seen in some of my earlier videos for this playthrough, I believe it was in the mountain realm, I had basically finished a couple levels without getting the rune stones, but had to go back and then play them again, and then those were the levels that the actual videos that I used for this playthrough, because I didn't want to show you all of my my failures, if you will. Because that just would have got boring if you had seen me play the same levels over and over again. And I'll go on about the graphics again. It's just even like some of the subtle texture on some of the surfaces just looks really good. And it just ends up making the game just have a very good graphic style overall. And since now I already got the runestone here, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can just go to the next level.
Buy power-ups.
And of course, like usual, I'll just buy a few strength here.
You are now entering the gnarled branches.
Okay, that one was the tree and this one is the branches. So now this one has to have the final runestone because the first level did not, and this realm only has 4 levels. So this is one of those levels. It's kind of a make or break. If you don't find your runestone here, you're gonna either A, miss the runestone, or B, you're gonna have to just look all around the level until you find it. And now, I had actually read an FAQ when I was playing this, to see if I could have an easier time finding the runestones, and one of the FAQs actually said that if you're playing single player, you cannot get all the runestones, which, if you're watching this video to its conclusion, I will be shortly here proving that wrong. I forget if it was the first level. Well, I mean, technically the second level, but the first level was a runestone. Or if it was this one. I'm pretty sure it was this one that it said you needed 2 players. And I was thinking to myself, would Midway and Atari Games really make a game that's unbeatable alone? Because the thing is, this game is great to play with a bunch of people, but let's say it's like in a bar or somewhere where maybe there's not as much traffic that there wouldn't be as many people playing this game. It would be horrible if they made a game that was broken because you can't actually finish the game without other players. But then again, it's always a possibility that the FAQ I had read was actually referring to a earlier version, because I believe what I'm running here is actually version 1.6 off of the hard drive. So it could be a possibility that, let's say, the first version of Gauntlet Legends had that problem where in the forest realm here you couldn't get all the runestones, but maybe people complained and then in subsequent versions they actually fixed the problem. So I really can't judge based off of that because, as I had mentioned a few times now, before this playthrough I had not done a full playthrough with all the runestones. And that's one thing that's always good to do. If you have enemies that are from afar or throwing stuff at you, try to defeat them, because if, say they're just like lobbers or something, they're just going to keep trying to throw their bombs at you, but if it's a generator, it will continuously generate more enemies. So you really don't want that, because by the time you're there, it'll be mobbed by all the enemies that you could possibly imagine. So it does kind of help to actually get rid of them as easily as soon as you possibly can. And this is one of those games that, by default, 2 points, 1 credit, and that buys you 500 health. So if you just have a lot of money in the arcade, you could just pump a bunch of quarters and not have to worry about health for a while. But what I tend to do when I play this, like, at home here, is I'll just give myself enough health for now, and then I will give myself more based off of what I need. Because it honestly does get a little boring if you, like, have, like, 4,000 health. And, you know, there's no, like, risk, if you will, that you're gonna run out of health, so you just have to keep playing no matter what. Because like you'll see in this gameplay, it's not like I keep letting myself get hit or something.
9 runestones have been found.
I try to play as strategically as I possibly can, and of course that was the last runestone for this realm, so from here on out I don't have to worry about runestones at all whatsoever, so I can just get through this level and then go on to the boss. And there are some levels where, some realms where it'll be 1, 2, 3 are your runestones, like levels 1, 2, and 3. So then you might have a level or two that you don't have to worry about looking for a hidden runestone anywhere. So that makes it a little bit easier when you're playing these levels. And that's one thing I've noticed in some of these games, this Gauntlet. When you have those special enemies in your level, what'll happen is they'll kind of have a mixture of enemies on the level after the enemies. Or it'll be one of those levels where it'll be all the special enemy. Like, I believe the Castle Realm did that. Like, you basically had just the knights on the last level. Whereas this, you'll see there's a lot of the orange grunts here. And I believe if you had 2 players, one player could be on the elevator, and the other player could operate it. And now you see I'm level 39, 1 level short of being level 40. But of course, if you're 1 player, what happens here is you step on the activator, and then when you stand on the elevator, it will move. But of course, if you get onto the elevator and then walk back, it'll move without you, which does get a little bit annoying, but it's not too bad. And this was probably the first time I've gotten Acid Amulet, so that's why the announcer said Acid Amulet. I still could remember a time when I was actually trying to play this on MAME. I forget if it was the 1.2 or 1.6 version, as both of them are in MAME. But, I had just left the game, like, run idle for a while. I think I had to leave the room and come back. And then when I came back, I think the demo had gotten through maybe once or twice, and the game just kind of froze. That was kind of an emulation glitch on MAME's part. Because I can remember when it first came to, like, running these 3DFX games, they had some major trouble actually getting the 3DFX graphics card to be emulated on a PC, because in a way what you were doing was you were emulating a piece of PC hardware on a PC, which, considering when these were first introduced into MAME, computers weren't nearly as powerful as they are, say, today, where you'll have multi-core processors, speeds usually over or at 2 gigahertz, and you don't have to worry about emulating something like this. But I remember back in the day, when these were first put into MAME, it wasn't too uncommon for a computer to only have a single-core processor that wasn't even approaching 2 gigahertz. Like, I knew a lot of people who only had a gigahertz at the time that these games got added to MAME. And I can remember the biggest one I remember, because I think it was one of the first 3DFX games in MAME, was NFL Blitz. I hardly knew anybody who could run that game decently unless they had like the most amazingly built, like maybe $5,000 gaming rig at the time. And then it would run probably just about at full speed. It wouldn't run like as fluid as you see it right now running off the original board. And that power-up I picked right now is just like the X-ray specs, which...
Follow arrows.
If I were to actually go up to a treasure chest or a barrel, I would see what was inside it. So if it was one of those bad power-ups like the poison food, then I wouldn't waste the key on the treasure chest. And I can remember, I probably made mention of this in one of the other videos, but I can remember one of the things one of my friends would compare the PlayStation and N64 versions of this game is that off with the PlayStation version, since it had to pull the actual content from a CD and load it, you would get the more simplified sound when you grabbed food, whereas on the N64 version, since it was just off a ROM chip, you get the more complex thing that the character said. Like, I think the archer would say, like, "aw, substance," instead of just going,
heroic effort.
which is a lot smaller sound file, as you'd imagine. And now, since we've gotten all 3 runestones, we can move on to the boss without having to worry that we haven't completed the realm completely.
Powers. You are now entering the web of the Queen Spider.
And like the Queen Spider here, kind of like is a spider centaur, if you will, because she has a human body, but then she has, the bottom is like a spider, so it's kind of like a spider centaur. So you'll see what I just meant. She has kind of a human body, and then a like top half of her body, and the bottom half is all spider. And this is one of those bosses that can be pretty brutal, but if you have multiple players here, she tends to only attack one player, so it's not that big of a deal. But you gotta watch out for the stuff that she shoots, because it will make you stick, and then she'll attack you. Even when it's on the web for a while, you'll still actually be stuck to it. So until that stuff that she shoots disappears from the web, it's still going to be a hazard, and you still have to worry if you're going to get stuck to the web, and therefore you won't be able to get away before she like lunges at you. So basically what you do is, if you have multiple players in this, one of them kind of plays distraction for her to attack, and then the other can basically unload on her. But of course she will switch targets. So you do have to be mindful for that. So like, let's say I had a second player and I was keeping her attention. If I'm further away from her than the second player, she will start attacking the second player because they're closer. And that's one thing you always want to make sure with the boss, is that your actual super shot actually hits dead center, or it won't have as much effect, because the majority of your hit will not hit the boss. Whereas when you're using your super shot in a level, you're not really worried about that, because you just want to plow through a bunch of enemies. Whereas if you're only defeating one here, you want to make sure it focuses on that one enemy. And I definitely could remember when playing this in the arcade originally, all these fights had like kind of this epic feel to them, which they still do to this day. It doesn't feel like just a larger enemy, it feels like you're really in a battle for a boss here. Which, as I mentioned, you can see I'm trying to play as strategically as possible. I'm not just standing there and just shooting and pumping quarters into it. Because honestly, when it comes to playing a video game, it harkens back to like the Nintendo days when you had Game Genie and you had invincibility or unlimited lives. it would just get boring if you let every enemy on the screen just randomly hit you and you didn't try to defend at all. So that's why even with unlimited health here, which is what I have, by putting 2 quarters in I get 500 more health. I just play as strategically as possible, so it actually feels like a challenge. And as you've seen there, that's one thing you don't want to do with this boss, is you don't want her to get too close to you, or she will do a lot of slashing attacks, whereas her shooting is relatively easy to not get hit by. When she lunges at you, she'll get a few good hits in before you'll get away. And it's always good with these bosses if you're at the higher level and you have your familiar. I just have the basic butterfly familiar here. It's good because you get kind of an extra bit of shot in there. So that's always a good thing to get an extra shot when you're facing a larger scale boss like this. Or even the dragon or the chimera. And I believe first shot is just like the acid pools that shoot into the swamp. It's not going to like poison you or anything, but it will hurt you and cause you to like get hit, and therefore you gotta stop for a second. And now since I'm at level 40, not till level 50 do you actually get any kind of added bonus. I believe you'll either see that in the next video of this series or in the final video, I'm not sure, because the way that I have this chopped up is each realm I have in one video, and then all the after the 4 realm stuff more or less went into another video. And as you saw just a second ago there, I walked through some of that webby stuff that she throws and just kind of slowed down.
You have defeated the vicious Spider Queen and recovered her key. You have found all 3 runestones from this realm. Continue now on your quest to recover all 4 keys that unlock the Altar of Scorn.
And now, as you see there, we've completed the level. And, yeah, this has been another Game Nexus Gauntlet Legends Let's Play video, and I will see you in my next video. Later.